Hello everybody! Before we begin, I want to mention a few things. First and foremost, for reasons I will disclose later, I'll be talking both about Gothic 3 and its standalone sequel, Forsaken Gods. Secondly, I will be comparing Gothic 3 directly and heavily to Gothic 2 and 1, not to belittle it, but to highlight its strengths and weaknesses, especially because it represents the end of the Gothic Trilogy. Thirdly, I will be talking about mods. I know some of you are very touchy when it comes to modding, but please bear in mind that this is not Skyrim. Gothic 3 doesn't come with thousands of mods where you get to pick and choose which kind of experience you'd like to get. Instead, it has a couple of well-made mods which significantly improve the experience, and I will explain how and why later on in the video. Lastly, this video will contain minor spoilers from the game, but nothing that would ruin your enjoyment if you've never played it before. That being said, I believe that Gothic 3, and to a very small extent Forsaken Gods, is a good ending to the EPIC Trilogy that is Gothic, and in this review I will explain to you why. In my previous review, I said that Gothic 2 is a timeless masterpiece because how good the atmosphere, characters and story were, among other things. However, this time around Piranha Bytes went back to the drawing board and put those things in the back seat in favor of exploration, open world and combat. Instead of licensing an existing engine for Gothic 3, they decided to create their own custom engine called Genome, because they had envisioned this massive open world without loading screens. Back in the mid-2000s, this was an incredibly ambitious decision, whereas even The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, a game of massive success with a huge open world, released only 6 months prior to Gothic 3 in 2006, still had plenty of loading screens. This was a huge win for Piranha Bytes, as Gothic 3's massive open world is a gorgeous, thematically diverse and loading screen free sandbox for everybody to explore at their own pace. It all came at a price though. The game to this very day, in spite of its many patches and fixes, still has performance issues, most notably with constant stuttering, freezes and FPS drops. In my last Let's Play, I tried different things to rid myself of stuttering, like tweaking INI files, decompressing textures, reducing graphical settings and so forth, but with no success. The stuttering is most notably when moving between areas or loading a game, and sometimes during combat. For people who wish to have a fluid 60 FPS gameplay experience, I'm afraid this won't be achieved in Gothic 3. I was personally not bothered too much by it, but admittedly it was immersion breaking more than one time. Speaking of bugs and fixes, the people who worked on the community patch are the unsung heroes of this game, and I cannot express how grateful I am to them, because without their continued voluntary effort over the years, the game would have remained in the buggy and unfinished state it was at launch. The community patch 1.75 is absolutely core to the game, with a list of bugs and fixes as long as a PhD thesis, and with things such as alternative balancing and alternative AI, which make the game much better and more immersive. If I had to name one thing that I like the most in Gothic 3, it would be the exploration. Every time I think about doing a replay, the thing that drives me the most is exploring the world, the various locations, especially the desert of Varant and the snowy mountains of Nordmar. To me, it feels like every single aspect of Gothic 3, literally everything you can think about the game, is screaming "explore me." The world design is very well done, with countless memorable locations and sites for you to discover, with secrets and hidden treasures to uncover, and the best part is that it's always worth it. The best treasures and loot are always off the beaten path if you take the time to look. There is nothing in the game to stop you from venturing out to the far corners of the world from the very start of the game. You can jump into the sea and swim across to Varant, you can look for the secret paths across the mountains to Nordmar, and if you get into trouble along the way, you can simply run from what you can't handle and come back later when you're stronger. The teleporter stones, which you can find hidden in every city, make getting around easier, and you don't have to worry about traveling long distances every time you want to turn in a quest or simply go to a different zone. Which brings me to the next point. The story in this game is tightly connected to the exploration. Gothic 3 is a giant sandbox. You can go wherever you want and do whatever you want. The story is as non-linear as it gets, and it's up to you how much of it you want to uncover by doing various quests around the world, talking to different characters, and reading some of the lore you pick up on the way. In both Gothic 1 and 2, it was hinted that the war between humans and orcs is raging on in the Midland, and at the end of Gothic 2, you board Esmeralda to come here and see what's going on. Unfortunately, the war is already over, and it's up to you to put together the pieces of the puzzle and figure out what happened. You can choose various sides in a conflict, or you can choose to remain neutral. That's an option. The best part is that your choices matter, and the ending will reflect that. At the start of the game, you are given a quest to find Zardas, the mysterious necromancer, and as you explore the world, you find out more about Zardas' actions and where to find him. You are never given his precise location, and nobody really knows about him or his whereabouts, but you slowly start to put together the big picture as you talk to more and more people. There is no set order in which you do things, and you can go back and forth as you feel like it. In almost all of my playthroughs, I found Zardas after 20 to 30 hours, and it wasn't because I didn't know where to look for him or how to find him, but I was having such a good time exploring the world and meeting up with my old buddies from Gothic 1 and 2 that the main quest was just a thing in the back of my mind. Whether you want to find Zardas 30 minutes or 30 hours into the game is entirely up to you, because the game doesn't tell you otherwise. None of this, however, would work without great combat. One of my favorite aspects of Gothic 3 is how you engage in combat and the various ways in which you can win a fight. Because of the new engine, unlike in Gothic 1 and 2 where the combat was single focus, this time around it's easy to fight large groups of enemies and disengage from combat whenever you want, thanks to the newly added sprint mechanic which uses stamina. Stamina is not only used for sprinting but also fighting, as swinging your sword and doing special attacks utilizes it, and some creatures even have the ability to stop it from regenerating it, essentially impairing you from fighting efficiently or running away for dear life. This was a necessary and more than welcome change from the prequels, which fits the exploration theme of the game perfectly. The melee combat was changed to a more streamlined and special moves type instead of the well-timed attacks as it was before, and normally I wouldn't like this, but I feel like in this situation it was a suitable change and I didn't mind it so much. The alternative AI from the community patch enhances the melee combat by leaps and bounds, by making the enemies smarter and quicker, essentially making them more difficult but more fun as well. Without the community patch, you can basically kill hordes of enemies with just a stick by mashing left click. That's how stupid they are. Forsaken Gods doesn't have alternative AI, which makes the melee combat too bland, where you can just spam stab attacks and hard slashes until you win. If you try stabbing randomly in Gothic 3, the NPCs will block you and then beat you senseless. You have to wait for openings in their attacks and actually think about what you're doing if you want to stand a chance. The ranged combat change was one that I enjoyed a lot more, with you having to actually aim and calculate for the gravity and trajectory of the arrows, instead of having the arrows reach their target like a homing missile. I saved the best for last, with the magic system being the one I enjoyed the most. However, it does sacrifice all of the immersion it had in the prequels for pure functionality and faster gameplay. For instance, in order for you to learn Fireball in Gothic 3, all you need is the necessary amount of ancient knowledge, or the equivalent of intelligence in your typical RPG or MMORPG, a little bit of gold, and you can simply go to a statue of Enos and learn the spell. Simple, right? Unimmersive, but it's fast and it gets you back to exploration and combat quicker. In Gothic 2, it was the complete opposite. First, you had to learn and join the appropriate magic circle, up to the 6th for the best magic spells. Second, you had to learn how to create the spell. Third, you needed a blank rune and the appropriate ingredients for each spell, and to top it all off, you also needed a spell scroll corresponding to the spell which you are trying to create. Fourth, you had to go to a rune table and actually create the spell, but wait, you thought that was it? No sir! You also had to go and increase your mana pool significantly, as each new magic circle had new spells which require a lot more mana than the previous circle, and you started the game with virtually no mana. It sounds complicated because it was, but it was also extremely immersive, and you got to value each new spell a hell of a lot more because how much time and effort you had to spend to create new ones. Gothic 3 says no thanks to that, and instead it makes it easy and fast for you to get new spells, and instead focuses on the interaction and the combos between them. If you'd like to know more about them, watch my Gothic 3 spell review video, link is in the cards. Overall, I deeply enjoyed the combat, and I would say that I liked it more than the prequels. It is fast and fun, and together with the focus on exploration, it makes the gameplay loop very addictive. It's the reason why I replay the game every now and then. All that being said, now let's talk about the negatives of the game, because it certainly has a few. First off, it feels a little bit too much like an MMORPG, and I don't mean from the point of view of combat or how you have a skill bar or stuff like that, but from the perspective of the story, characters, atmosphere, and immersion. I think that too much was sacrificed in favor of exploration, and it hurts the other aspects of the game. Let's start with the story. And while the story is very open and up to you so it can facilitate exploration, Gothic 3 doesn't actually have a story of its own. In fact, Gothic 3's story is more like Gothic 2's Chapter 7. If Gothic 2 had a 7th and last chapter, it would be called Gothic 3. Gothic 3 feels to me like a prolonged ending to the Gothic story and the Gothic series. It's basically one huge ending. One long Chapter 7. The worst part is that Gothic 3 itself doesn't really have an ending because it doesn't really have a story. Gothic 3's ending is basically the conclusion to the choices you've made in the game, which is fine, but it's not impactful in any way. Every time I've replayed Gothic 3, it left me scratching my head at the end. Like, is the game really over? I thought we were just getting started type of thing. So at the end it left me feeling like there was something missing. Like, this can't really be it. There's no big baddie at the end, no dragons to fight, no overarching evil that you must overcome. The game just ends. The worst part is that if you're a completionist like I am, and you've spent 40 plus hours looking under every rock, every patch of grass for treasure and loot, and you have the best possible gear, level 999, then there's nothing for you to throw that up against. After finishing the game, I always get one big meh. Just meh. So this is where Forgotten Gods comes into play, as it offers the big baddie fight at the end with the actual ending to the overall story, but I will talk about it a bit later. The second thing that I thought wasn't as good as the prequels was the ambience and the atmosphere in the game. Whomever thought that combat music was a good idea back at Piranha Bytes should go slap himself. It was destroying the immersion for me. I wish I had a way to turn that thing off. I even tried changing the soundtrack to Gothic 2's, but that didn't work either. This was a huge deal breaker for me, and I disliked it with a passion. Every time anything would engage me in combat, regardless of whether I would see the thing or not, combat music would roll. You could be in a cave and something could try to attack you from above or below you, and you would get combat music. So not only that you would get a warning that there's something dangerous nearby, but most time it felt like a cheat. Also, hearing the same annoying soundtrack for 40 plus hours is nerve-wracking. One of the absolute best parts of Gothic 2 and 1 was the fact that you could tell the type of encounters you are going to have based on the surroundings and the soundtrack. By the way it looked and by the way it sounded, if you just closed your eyes and listened, you could tell if something was in combat with you or not, and what that was. It simply was amazing. It felt like I knew and understood the world and its dangers. It was immersive, it was atmospheric, and it was brilliant. In Gothic 3, I feel like I should just turn off the music and go listen to some Taylor Swift, because why bother? Not only that the monsters don't make their own usual sounds as you approach them as a warning, but the monster placement sometimes seems random too. You can find anything anywhere in Gothic 3, and even more so in Forsaken Gods. How can you tell what sort of encounter you're going to have? Well, you can't, but at least you're going to hear the same annoying combat music that you've been hearing for the past dozen hours. Enjoy. The third thing were the characters. I simply couldn't get myself to care about them. The overwhelming majority of them are needy, useless bums who just sit around doing nothing and expect you to come and fix their problems. Get me 10 wolf pelts, kill 10 monsters, I need 5 mana plants, I need 3 healing potions, I need 5 weapon bundles, escort me from point A to point B, defeat some people in the arena, and there you go. I've just described to you what you'll be doing the majority of time for the majority of the characters in this game. Fetch quests. That's why I say it feels like an MMORPG. The characters are not convincing me that their problems are real or that I should care about them. If I skip every dialogue, I'm not missing much in terms of what they need me to do. This further amplified by the fact that you can solve quests even before accepting them. Yes, it helps a lot with exploration, but at the price of the characters and the immersion. The characters in Gothic 1 and 2 were much more believable to me and their issues. In Gothic 3, I feel like they're incompetent and they need my help finding their own ass and wiping. And this is taken to the point of ridicule in Forsaken Gods, but we'll get to that. The fact that the world is so big isn't a good excuse for how poorly designed these things were. Imagine if every city you visited had some sort of unique story and background to it and you got to learn more about them. Instead, every city has the same copy-paste fetch quests that the previous one did, and everybody's acting like a moron. The fourth and final thing is the immersion, which in my opinion took the biggest hit. In my Gothic 2 review, I said that the one little thing which helped a lot with the immersion was when you were going by doing your business and people said, "For Enos" as a mage.
For Enos.
Or how people reacted to you based on your choice of class. Well, Gothic 3 says no thanks. In vanilla Gothic 3 at launch, you could basically become a warrior, hunter and mage in the same playthrough, so everybody refers to you as warrior. That's the most generic and boring thing ever. Here I am in my robes with my staff, shooting fireballs out of my eye sockets, and people call me a warrior. Yes, I know it's a generic thing and mages are warriors too, but hot damn, it's so immersion breaking. One of the things I was mostly looking for in my last playthrough was meeting the mages at the monastery of Nordmar. At that point I was a full-blown mage, looking like the second coming of Enos, and the magicians there were treating me like I was some naked bum. So because of this, it made me appreciate Gothic 2 all the more, for all those little details, which made the immersion all the more fulfilling and rewarding. In conclusion, yes, I enjoyed the exploration, I enjoyed the combat and the open world without loading screens. But none of the other aspects of the game had the same Gothic charm as the previous games had. It felt like a completely different experience this time. I wish they had spent a little more time and creativity with the quests and perhaps making more memorable encounters instead of the pile of generic copy-paste. Alright, so before I finish this review, let's talk about the Black Sheep Forsaken Gods. After ending my Gothic 3 Let's Play, I felt as satisfied with the conclusion, and I wonder if Forsaken Gods has something to offer in terms of story. I have played Gothic 3 numerous times before, ever since its launch, but I've never managed to finish Forsaken Gods, so I wanted to know what happens at least one time. Sadly, about 2 hours in, I realized why I've never finished Forsaken Gods, and that's because it's hot poo-poo. That's right, hot poopchki. My god, where do I even begin? Okay, let's start with the fact that the story is completely linear. And I mean completely and utterly linear. I had to restart the whole thing twice because I was killing named NPCs which apparently were essential, even though they really weren't. In Forsaken Gods, if you don't do the quests exactly in the order that you were meant to do them in, you cannot continue. So if you go ahead and kill an NPC whom you think it's trivial, but in fact he has like one line of dialogue in a quest further down the line, then your game is over and you cannot continue. You have to restart again. So it happened to me twice. And it happened to me years ago, and I remember that is the reason why I didn't want to replay it again. Like seriously, can this be more antithetic to how Gothic 3 is? The worst part is that it offers its own narrative of events. So basically it acts like 2/3 of Gothic 3 didn't happen, or rather like you are a complete ghost, you didn't talk to anybody, you didn't take any action, you simply finished the main quests and that was it. So that's complete poo-poo as well. And ironically, the story of the game is about the conflict between Thoris and Gorn and how they're about to fight each other. Do you know how many times I've killed Thoris?
One less. Nothing to be had there. Nothing. I'll shock you to pieces. I'll tear you apart.
Goodbye, Taurus. I've killed him in Gothic 1, in Gothic 2, and in Gothic 3, and here he is, still alive in Forsaken Gods. Thoris is like Kenny in South Park.
Oh my god! They killed Kenny! You bastard! Oh my god! They killed Kenny! You bastard! Oh my god! They killed Kenny!
Do you know what was the first thing I did in Forsaken Gods? I went and met with Thoris and I tried to kill him. I was like, nah, there's no story here. I'll just go kill Thoris. It's simple. But the game was like, no thanks. Thoris, this fourth time around, was invincible. Literally invincible. So I had to restart again because I had killed too many quote-unquote essential NPCs. Okay, fine. But that's just one thing. The icing on the cake is how this game has become self-aware all of a sudden, and it turned the ridicule dial up to 11 on itself. Do you know how you walk up to people and they just give you things to do in Gothic 1, 2 and 3? Well, nah, that's not how you do it. First, you have to walk up to them and greet them. Then you have to listen to them, tell you about their life stories and how they can't sleep at night. And then they proceed to giving you the most meaningless fetch quests imaginable. It makes you feel like these guys haven't mastered breathing and they need to be reminded constantly how to do it or they suffocate. They need help tying their shoelaces and wiping their own butts. If you've ever wanted to do meaningless quests and to be a pigeon in a video game, Forsaken Gods is for you.
Why is there people outside the city though? Boris.
Huh. Who are you?
A fellow citizen of Myrtana. Some would say I'm a warrior.
Wonderful. We need more warriors. I am a warrior, so was my father. So was my mother. The only woman warrior in all of Myrtana. She was also a great cook and...
Thank you. I have to leave now. Greetings, friend. Why do you look so troubled?
I am Boris the Bison Hunter, winner of 3 bison hunt and cook competitions. My father was a bison hunter before me, and so was my mother, and so...
That's nice. But why do you look so troubled?
A herd of crazy bison had strayed into the land a little up north. Fine bison, just like the ones I caught some years ago in the time of Zardas. He was a good man. I wonder what happened to him.
Okay then. Why don't you go and get them instead of just standing there?
I see Enos has blessed you with a keen mind. For your information, sir, war has broken out. Orcs are everywhere. I have a duty to guard this camp, and I have no replacement. For generations, my ancestors have never abandoned their posts. It is said that my ancestors guard the gates of both Enos and Beliar. Did you know that?
Listen, friend. Hold on a minute. Do you think I can help in any way?
No, I don't think so. Well, no, maybe you can, but I'm not sure if you'd want to. Why would you? What do you...
Why don't you just ask me?
You're quite an irritable person, aren't you? Well, you can either take my place and guard the camp while I go hunt bison, or you can go and hunt the bison for me. What'll it be?
Neither one.
I'll hunt them for you.
What is wrong with these people? And also, Zarda... Oh, teleporter stone.
If you hate your life and your time so much, then Forsaken Gods will help you hate it even more. Forsaken Gods is a bad dream where everybody is on swamp weed talking nonsense. 99.99% of the characters are not just annoying but obnoxious, crazy, and or delusional. I say 99.99% because I still like Milton. But the rest don't make a shred of sense between them. For instance, you have to pay 50,000 gold just to meet up with Gorn. Yes, Gorn, the guy whose life you've saved numerous times before and fought side by side with. You have to do half a dozen annoying fetch quests before you can meet up with Lee. And generally, every character is a whiny little bitch. Seriously, this game almost drives me crazy. The only worthwhile thing about it were the last 15 minutes of the game, which gave you a boss fight and an actual ending to the Gothic story. Take my advice and don't play Forsaken Gods. Unless... nothing. It's not worth it. I won't spoil the ending for you, but if you want to see the boss fight and the ending cinematic, watch my last episode of Forsaken Gods Let's Play. It's on YouTube, it's 15 minutes long. In my opinion, those 15 minutes should have been in Gothic 3 and nothing else. Forsaken Gods' attempt at humor and satire made me facepalm myself into a coma, only to come back a week later and do it again. It took me longer to finish Forsaken Gods than any other Let's Plays, simply because I needed like a week's worth of break between 1 hour of gameplay. If there's a hell for me in the afterlife, it's playing Forsaken Gods. Before we end this video, I would like to talk a little bit about mods. There are a couple of very good mods, which in my opinion enhance the gameplay greatly. Mainly Quest Pack and Content mod. They add a ton of lore-friendly additions to the game and patch some of the plot holes which existed in a story. Do you know how you lose all of your gear and knowledge yet again at the start of Gothic 3? With these mods you get some of that back in a lore-friendly way based on the choices that you've made in Gothic 2. Watch this clip of me finding my old Fire Mage robe.
Gotcha. Is this a pirate? Hank. Oh, I saw his name mentioned in one of those texts. Bloody note. What? My fire robe? My fire robe? Like mine? Like mine? Oh my god, these guys took my fire robe, dude. From the ship, from Esmeralda. So these are the pirates who stole Esmeralda. And this is actually my fire robe. Hell yeah, man. But I can't actually believe that the druid robe might be better. But yeah, I'll wear this robe in any case. I mean, it is my robe, even though it does look a little bit worn out. Oh ho ho, look at that. Old book about dragons. Oh, that is very interesting. And a diary. Transformate into a stone dragon. What? That is great. Oh my god, it is the Claw of Beliard. What is it doing here? What? What is my Claw of Beliard doing all the way here? Maybe his diary can tell me.
Moments like these of genuine surprise and happiness cannot be faked, and for me personally, they are some of the best moments I've had in the entire trilogy and in gaming overall. I highly recommend these mods, and I will leave a link in the description to someone else's channel if you want to learn how to install them. Alright, to wrap this whole video up, I enjoyed playing Gothic 3. It has some issues, which in my opinion prevent it from being great, but I certainly enjoyed the combat and the exploration more than anything, and every time I do a replay, it's thanks to those. The gameplay loop is very good. Everything else is not as good as it was in the prequels, but they were meant to enhance the exploration, and I can accept that. Sadly, the conclusion to the Gothic story is locked behind the game that must not be named, but thankfully you can watch it on YouTube. Overall, I think that Gothic 3 is a good game and a good ending to the Gothic Trilogy. Thank you guys for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe for more content. Let me know in the comment section below if you like Gothic 3 and which one of the Gothic games is your favorite so far. And also, have you played the game that must not be named? Let me know. Have a good day, everybody.